Relax. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Welcome to Pillow Talk Radio, the most delicious place to be. On this podcast, we explore how to create more connection, possibility, romance, and magic in love and in life. I'm your host and relationship specialist, Cora Boyd. Are you with me? Hello again, my friends. Welcome back to Pillow Talk Radio. Today, I'm really excited to share my mental health journey with you and how I super turned my mental health around. Very drastically different experience that I live now than I used to. But before I get into that, I want to let you guys know that I just opened up a membership community, which I'm really excited about, called Magnetics Plus. So this is going to be the first time that I have a consistently enrolling offer, which is pretty exciting, I think, for both of us. So this is for everyone who identifies as a curious entrepreneurial spirit. Interpret that as you will. I left it mischievously open-ended because I love seeing who shows up to work with me. So here's what you get. You get access to a membership portal, a private membership portal, where you can connect with other members and process the information together, support each other, fucking joke around. I don't care. Y'all get up to whatever you want to get up to in there. In that portal, there is a growing private library of resources called the Chamber of Secrets. So there's already maybe like 20 hours of private content in there, much deeper stuff that I work on with my clients. And also, I'm going to be going live in the group, sharing a deeper perspective, deeper understanding of my podcasts and on Instagram, my Instagram posts. You will also get access to a monthly group Q&A call with me. All of those calls are recorded and go into the Chamber of Secrets. And you will receive early access to my offerings, my group offerings. All of that for $329 per month. And it's a lot of value. If you are interested, we are currently enrolling via an interview process. So please email hello@coraboydcoaching.com to set up an interview if you were enticed, titillated by what you just heard. So diving into the episode. Today, we are going to talk about mental health. I'm going to share some tips and things that have really worked for me and a bit about my story, my personal journey, and how I've really turned my mental health around. It really means a lot to me to be able to genuinely say, yes, I have fantastic mental health. And that is in large part because I have taken my mental health seriously for years now. I really have dedicated myself towards holistically experiencing the highest quality of life that I can. And a huge part of that involves not living in a state of constant fear with anxiety. I think with the pandemic hitting and racial injustice, just complete shit show that has been occurring on multiple levels in the last handful of months, that was when I really started to realize how much my mental health practices are not only effective, deeply effective, but also how grateful I am to past versions of myself and current versions who have really developed the tools and skills and perspective, everything I'm going to share with you today, so that through the last handful of months, yes, of course, like everyone, I have experienced dips. The first wave of the protests, I really experienced a couple panic attacks that were more like exorcisms than panic attacks, because I think I was also processing a lot of grief. So I've been feeling very intensely. I've had my ups and downs, and I have felt very resilient throughout these last handful of months. That is because I am consistent and proactive with taking care of my mental health. So that was really, really nice for me to see the fruits of that, understand, feel on a deeper level the fruits of what I have been working on for years. And to be able to, from that place, be someone who can support other people, whether you're listening to my podcast, whether you follow me on Instagram, whether you work with me in one of my group programs, or you're a member of Magnetics Plus, however you come into contact with me, it really is an honor and a pleasure to be able to be a source of constructive positivity. And my intention is always to learn through doing, through experiencing, and it just warms my heart tremendously to be able to then give that back to help other people. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I would describe my experience with anxiety as a pretty intimate one. Through most of my younger life, I experienced pretty chronic low level anxiety with some eras that were very high ringing, resounding spikes of anxiety. I have certainly had plenty of panic attacks in my day. So I'm deeply familiar with anxiety. And I also want to be clear here that mental health it's deeply personal, and for the purposes of this podcast, I'm really speaking from my own experience and my own experience with anxiety and some bouts of depression as well, circumstantial depression. So when I was younger, I actually didn't know that the low level constant fear I was experiencing was anxiety. I didn't really put a name to it. I didn't really realize that until I was around 20 when I was living in Argentina. And in retrospect, I certainly knew of anxiety as a concept. I just didn't identify what I sometimes experienced as anxiety. And in retrospect, I don't know what I really thought anxiety was, but I was very surprised and interested to put a name to it when I finally did. So I'd say that when I was younger, most of the anxiety that I would experience was around schoolwork. Around schoolwork. I used to have this constant nagging fear that wasn't even very conscious. It was subconscious for the most part. I used to have this fear that I was going to fail in school, despite all the evidence that I always got excellent grades and got accolades in school. I did very well in school. I always had this fear that I was going to fail. That actually, come to find out later, when I started coaching, and my coach, Morgan, really blew my mind when she helped me realize that I had a subconscious belief that I was stupid, which I had picked up from a handful of experiences when I was younger. That really changed the game for me. That's also a testament to how powerful coaching is, because our subconscious beliefs, by nature of being subconscious, they're not conscious. I had no fucking idea that that's the belief I was operating from. No idea. So I would have anxiety around schoolwork and around failing. I would have a lot of anxiety around like bureaucracy and things having to do with methodical outside world, like the institution of my university, right? Like failing grades, failing airports, things that to me felt very kind of like rigid and unforgiving, bureaucratic. That would give me a lot of anxiety. So I actually believe that I had a panic attack for the first time when I was 15, when I lived in Chile. And I went alone and I didn't speak any Spanish. And if you've ever been to Chile, you know that the Spanish that they speak is super fast, super colloquial, and just entirely its own thing. I had pretty bad anxiety when I was an exchange student in Chile and when I was an exchange student later when I was 20 in Argentina. Both of those times were times when I was alone in a foreign country, very much like getting after it by myself. No one was really helping me that much. Yes, I had contacts, I lived with people, etc. But in both of those situations, I really, really had to fend for myself. And I spoke Spanish when I was in Argentina because I had learned by being in Chile when I just had to learn by necessity. But when I was in Chile, when I was 15 and having, some pretty bad anxiety, especially towards the beginning. Those were two instances in my life when I really, really, because they were very stressful, I really learned to be proactive and to be self-sufficient and to create relationships and to communicate across cultures and learn language and just really be with myself. I'm deeply grateful for those experiences. And both of them ended up being really great. And I had periods, especially towards the beginning, when I was just experiencing extreme spikes of anxiety and panic attacks because I was freaked out. I was fucking freaked out. So when I was 20 in Argentina is when I was sharing with my mom, oh my God, like I'm feeling so, I don't know what's happening. Like I'm feeling, she's like, oh, that's anxiety. And I was like, what? That's anxiety? That's what anxiety is? So I gave it a name at that point. I started running, I started exercising, and it was so powerful to be able to give it a name because then I could read about it. I could research about it. I could know what I was dealing with. I could look for resources to help me with it. So that was a big turning point. Another massive spike of anxiety that I had was when I think I was 22. I was 22. And I had just gotten back from traveling around Europe and Thailand and Central America for a year. And I came back to New Orleans where I had gone to school. And I was really just dealing with a lot. I was experiencing pretty intense reverse culture shock. I was really, really asking myself some deep existential questions. I was trying to figure out what to do with myself professionally and just feeling very angsty, directionless, confused, discouraged, and a little depressed. I was also moving through a lot of heartache. My ex-boyfriend and I were attempting to reconnect platonically, and it was just very painful. So I was processing a lot with that relationship, a lot of heartache. I was struggling to identify a sense of purpose. It was summer in New Orleans. It was really fucking hot. So I think I was physically irritable. And I had met this Spanish guy when I was living in Northern Ireland during that year. I had met this Spanish guy who came to the States to visit me. And this is a story for another podcast, but it went very poorly. I just, in different time and place, I really wasn't feeling it like I had been. He had bought this motorcycle and he was going to be driving this motorcycle out to California, but it broke down and the part he was ordering wasn't coming in from Florida. So he was just like there indefinitely. And I was like having the most awful existential anxiety spike of my life. And it really just was a disaster. Oh man, it was a total disaster. I learned a lot from that. But that was really, really when it reached such a fervent fever pitch, my anxiety, that I had this moment of reckoning with myself where I was like, okay, this is my one life. And there are things that I can do. There are things that one can do to alleviate anxiety, to really address it, to really get hands-on with it. And I have the option to not be living in a state of constant fear. Why the fuck am I not doing those things? Like, why the fuck am I not taking this as seriously as it is? Because this is my life. This is my freaking life. And it's happening now. So at that time, I started therapy. I started working with my therapist, Diana, who is awesome and really, really helped me start to develop cognitive tools and emotional tools for moving through anxiety. I started working with Diana. I started running regularly. I started really taking my life direction into my own hands. It wasn't easy even at that point. I think I had 12 different jobs in a year-long period, maybe even more because I had multiple at once. But I was really trying a bunch of different shit out. I was really hustling, and it wasn't easy. It was very frustrating at certain points, but little by little, I started to move in this direction where I was like, oh, okay, like I like that. I'm good at that. Oh, and here's this other, I see this person doing this thing over here. Oh, I didn't realize that was a possibility. Like incrementally, I was building and honing. Here's the direction I want to go. Okay, what next? Right. So I started to very actively participate and take responsibility for my purpose. Then I went through my year-long certification in positive psychology. That was another massive shift because in that program, I learned the psychology of well-being, the psychology of happiness. And I really studied it and got clear on what merited my energy and attention and what really didn't, what actually alleviates anxiety and what doesn't. I started to learn the psychology behind it. So I really, really educated myself on that. That helped tremendously. Around that time, I also started to get into mindfulness and meditating. So I started to meditate. I really started to integrate a lot of these mental health practices into my life. Quit my job. I decided I was going to start my own business. I decided I was going to move across the country. Suffice it to say, I started having these really wild breakthroughs with my coach, Morgan, as she was helping me really understand fear and how fear works and how to familiarize myself with my own process of fear. And I realized all these things. I quit my job. I, was just drinking a bunch of iced coffee, pacing around New Orleans, having lots of casual sex, and just like having this very empowering, messy awakening of sorts. So that was another massive shift that year when I started doing coaching. That's a huge part of why I moved into coaching myself, is just because I was like, hot damn. Yep, our beliefs inform everything, and that shit can be rewired. And this shit is extremely powerful and effective, and has completely opened up my life. As I was working with Diana and Morgan, starting to build out a mental health support network, as I was working with them, healing traumas, facing fears, learning to move through fears, I really started to shift my inner dialogue from one of criticism to one of self-celebration and self-encouragement. So shifting your inner dialogue to be a friendly one instead of a critical one is the fastest way to short circuit positive change in your life. I really started to work on boundaries, both energetic boundaries and boundaries with other people. That was a huge game changer for my mental health, namely boundaries around other people, because I didn't realize all these ways that I was just very depleted a lot of the time because I was being way more available to other people than felt good for me. So I was cleaning up all these historical people pleasing tendencies, clearing up relationships that didn't need to be there, really starting to be intentional about the people I was around, and clearing up social toxicity to the point now where, because I choose who I work with, and I also am just very intentional with who I'm around, I almost never interact with anyone I don't like. Almost never at this point in my life. It's very, very rare. And that, that really helps with mental health. It really does. Being intentional with who you're around. So I started to do a lot of clearing in that way, a lot of boundary setting. I just want to be clear that this was a holistic process, that many of these things were happening simultaneously, right? And it didn't happen overnight. So I'm kind of like moving through these things because they didn't happen necessarily in a linear order, in a linear chronological order. as I'm describing all of this, this is happening over the course of a number of years. So, holistic process doesn't happen overnight, totally doable. Another huge shift that I noticed alleviated a ton of anxiety was taking responsibility over mastering my own energy and my own energy patterns, and actually learning to understand my own energy patterns, learning about myself, learning what my needs were. So I realized that I had, because I am a very connective social animal, I had had that reflected back to me a lot in my life. People would say that to me a lot. Oh, you're so social. You're such a connector, to the point where I thought that meant that I was an extrovert, because my understanding at that time was that, oh, if you're a social person, you're an extrovert. That's what being an extrovert means, when actually it has more to do with how you charge your energy and your battery. Little by little, I realized that for most of my life, especially while I was in college and afterwards, and by the way, I'm 27, in case anyone is confused. I'm sure someone's going to ask me. I realized little by little that for most of my life, especially in college and the handful of years afterwards, I had been operating as if I were an extrovert, when in reality, I'm pretty ambiverted. I actually need quite a bit of time alone. I realized that I was energetically depleted because I was around people more than I actually needed more alone time to recharge. So I started spending a lot more time alone. And that goes hand in hand with really nurturing my relationship with myself, nurturing my inner dialogue to the, I love spending time alone. I love hanging out by myself. It's very fun for me. So I started doing more of that to recharge my energy. I started sleeping more. I started realizing, okay, like if I'm traveling like this, I need to, because there was a point where I was traveling a lot pre-pandemic. If I'm traveling like this all the time, like I need buffer days. Oh, okay. If I have a social engagement on Tuesday, I probably need, a couple hours before, and I need probably Wednesday evening to myself. I just started to notice what drained my energy, to notice and learn what drained my energy and what charged my energy, and to work with that. And that is a continuing process that the more and more I master it, the more awesome life is. I learned some other energy drains. I also learned that I'm what they call a hypersensitive person. So I have a very open nervous system that I actually get incredibly sensorily overwhelmed if I don't bubble my energy, if I, overextend myself in certain ways. I'm very sensitive to auditory noises. So I have all these little things, these little practices I've developed with myself where, like if I'm in a non-COVID world, if I were to be taking a lift between social thing to next social thing, I can actually do that because I'll recharge. I'll listen to deep tropical house in the lift, and I do that by setting a boundary with the driver where I'm like, hey, I'm going to listen to music. Right? You're just like upfront, clear instead of obligation. So I've developed all these little tricks with myself to introvert between things, or introvert in the bathroom, do my breath work. Like I just have learned what recharges me, and I wield that in ways that are very effective, so that yes, sometimes I still do get depleted, but not as often. Not as often. And when I do, I know what I need to recharge, and I can tell that I'm depleted. So what I used to do is I would just be depleted and like not really realize that was what's happening, and that would create anxiety, etc. Negative feedback loop. So mastering my own energetic patterns, and also understanding energetic boundaries. So energetic boundaries is what you give your energy to. This can be with people, right? Not taking on their feelings. So this is very great for empaths. This can be with your thoughts, right? Like setting energetic boundaries with yourself of like what you're obsessively thinking about. So that's something I've also gotten better and better at, is setting energetic boundaries. On that note, I'm consistent with morning routines where I do my mental health practices. I meditate, I journal, I exercise, I have my pleasure practice, which I will do another episode about. In short, I've really learned what I need in order to feel charged. And I'm very consistent and proactive about doing those things. So, on a physical level, I started getting massages. I am not currently able to get as many massages as I would like. But when I first went to my masseuse, Chelsea, who I miss, I miss you, Chelsea, if you're listening to this. She told me in her 6 years doing massage, she had actually met only 2 other people who had the same amount of tension in their body as me. Which that was a huge wake-up call. That was a huge wake-up call. I actually cried on the massage table because I was just like, hot damn, okay, like I need to take this seriously. I need to take this really seriously because I want to be healthy. I don't want to develop an illness from having ridiculous amounts of body tension. So what I learned is that in the same way that we develop muscle memory for stress, right? If we're chronically stressed, our body is going to remember to be stressed, which then with the mind-body connection leads to mental anxiety, which leads to physical anxiety and that feedback loop. So it's really important to address the mental, physical, emotional, all of it, right? Again, holistic process. In the same way that you develop muscle memory for stress, you can also develop muscle memory for relaxation. So the more that you relax your body, and we do that through massage, heat, and stretching. Those are the 3 ways to relax the body. The more you relax the body, the more your body remembers, develops muscle memory for relaxation, and then that is in a feedback in conversation with your mind, right? So it helps with anxiety and stress. So as I said, heat is a way that we relax our muscles. So I actually take salt baths almost every day. I'm pretty consistent. I actually just got out of the bath before I was recording this. That has helped my mental health so much. The salts relax the muscles, they clear my energy. I love baths, right? And the heat relaxes the muscles. The more you do it, the more you develop that muscle memory for relaxation. And then that comes into conversation with how you're processing life. Another thing I do is I cry a lot. I've always been a crier. I feel things very deeply. It's been a process of me learning to process my feelings better and better, so that it's not that I never experience anxiety. It's not that I never experience unpreferred emotions or anger, or like any of these things. It's that I have gotten very good at moving them through my process so they move through faster and I don't stagnate in them or bottle them up. So I cry a lot. Crying releases tension. Crying is great. I cry whenever I need to. I cry whenever it happens, frequently, often in front of other people. In addition to exercising, I try to move my body every day in some capacity. I dance a lot. So pre-COVID, I would go to ecstatic dance every Thursday. Woo! Oh my God, it was great. Oh my God, I miss it. But that was really great for moving emotions through my body, for moving, for expressing myself. It was incredible. And as a Waldorf child, I was right at home in that pseudo hippie rave every Thursday night. Part of my morning routine is what I can only describe as fluttering around, which, is basically me listening to music, dancing around as I get dressed and kind of talk to myself. I try to express joy through my body. I also jump on my mini trampoline, which is excellent cardio and super joyful. It gets me in a great mood because it's just fun. I try to do things that are physical and fun. I also roller skate. So dancing, roller skating, moving my body in ways that feel good and expressive has helped me tremendously. The biggest change, positive change in my mental health, I've seen through quitting drinking alcohol, which I quit. Well, it's been a kind of a process. So I have not had any alcohol in about 9 months. And then prior to that, for about a year, I drank really minimally. So I actually have not had a hangover in 2 years, which is fucking amazing. So I've tipped back many a PBR in my day. Quitting alcohol is not something of former versions of myself ever saw coming, but it has been incredibly life-changing. It is so awesome. I'm deeply passionate about it. So alcohol is a depressant. It also is something we often use to suppress our feelings. So it actually, because it's a depressant, it actually creates anxiety. So that it was one of my biggest motivators for quitting is I was like, damn, okay, again, back to that question that I've been asking myself over the last handful of years of if there are things that I can be doing to not experience anxiety, why the fuck am I not doing it? I can't tell you enough how much I've noticed my baseline emotional state lift and elevate since I quit drinking alcohol. I also quit drinking coffee. I drank coffee the last handful of years. I actually didn't drink coffee until I was maybe like 22 or something. I'm 27 now. So it wasn't deeply entrenched for me, but I really loved coffee. I still love coffee, but I noticed it made me feel anxious because it spikes your cortisol. And there are ways to biohack it so that it doesn't. And that's why people will blend it with high omega fatty oils or coconut oil, MCT oil, these things. I have switched to mate, yerba mate, which I drink every morning because that's, I still like that caffeine high. I'm still trying to get a little lit in the morning time. But I noticed for me that mate is a much more lucid, clear caffeine buzz, and I never feel anxious with it. So those two things, which I actually quit at the same time, that's what like really, really skyrocketed me into feeling fucking fantastic almost all of the time. Another thing that has helped me tremendously is being very intentional with the content that I consume. So obviously I'm in the personal development world. I consume a lot of uplifting content, podcasts, books, etc. I have also found it very helpful to my mental health to consistently learn, to make a practice and an intention of always learning and learning about things that have nothing to do with my business, that have no, quote, purpose necessarily beyond just the joy of learning and following my curiosity. That gives me a great sense of purpose, and deepening my sense of purpose is something that has also helped with my mental health a lot. One of the most important things for my mental health is that I have an incredible support network. So not only do I have people who support me professionally through coaching and therapy, I'm also in a business mastermind, which is so good. If any of the ladies are listening, hey, it's where we all support each other. So I feel really supported in that. And I feel really supported in my relationship with Ben. I feel really supported in my close friendships. I feel really supported by my family. So I have this dope support network where when I am dipping, when I am like feeling anxious, when I am moving through something, I have plenty of people to call to help support me through that or talk me through that. I can't emphasize the importance of a support network enough. Yet another reason why relationships are what help us experience the highest quality of life. So one more quick little tip is I use an affirmations app called Think Up. Psychologically, we need repetition in order to create new neural pathways, which is why affirmations are so effective. And when you record it in your own voice, which you can on this app, our brain interprets our voice to be speaking the truth. So it's even more effective and deeply calming and relaxing. I actually listen to that in the bathtub often, and I listen to it as I'm going to sleep. And that's another way to get friendly with your internal dialogue is recite affirmations back to yourself. So that app is called Think Up. A meditation app I often use is called Calm that has daily guided meditations. If you're new to meditation, that's a great one to start with. So I could go on for quite a while. I have tons of little tips and tricks that I have accumulated for myself over the years, but I want to start to wrap this up and emphasize the importance of committing to the process of taking your mental health seriously, educating yourself, seeking out and creating an epic support network, being intentional with your thoughts and your words, creating a really friendly internal dialogue and celebrating yourself, supporting yourself, pursuing whatever gives you a sense of purpose and excitement, whatever makes you feel lit up in life. It's really all about proactively and continuously healing. Healing, being compassionate with yourself, and getting support. So wherever you're at, just know that it's entirely possible to turn your mental health around, to experience higher and higher quality of life, quality of being, and quality of well-being. It's your one life. So thank you so much for listening. I hope there was something in here that was helpful for you. If it felt overwhelming, like just a lot of information, start with whatever resonated with you most and recognize that this is a holistic process. It doesn't happen overnight. If this podcast was helpful for you, if you had an insight, if you learned something new, I would so appreciate it if you would share it with anyone who you think would also benefit from hearing it. Take a screenshot, put it on your story, tag me with any insight, aha moment you had. I would love to hear from you, and it would really mean a lot. See you next time. You would help share the good word. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pillow Talk Radio. I'm Cora Boyd, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep you in the loop. In the interim, you can find me on Instagram at @TheCoraBoyd, YouTube Cora Boyd, website CoraBoydCoaching.com. Have an excellent rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week.